Hello and welcome to Black, Brown, and Bilingue, where our mission is to unite the Black and Brown communities through education, storytelling, and community engagement.
The vision of Black, Brown, and Bilingue is to be part of creating a world in which Black and Brown identities are affirmed, bilingualism and biculturalism are nurtured, and equity is the driving force behind all that we do. All right, today our very special guest is Congressman James E. Clyburn, representative of South Carolina's 6th Congressional District and United States House Majority Whip. He chairs the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Crisis, which will be the basis of our conversation today.
And before we get started with the questions for today, we do want to give a quick shout out to Pastor Dominique Great of the South Carolina NAACP for helping us set up this interview and helping to, again, continue to spread information about COVID-19 and the vaccine. So again, thank you so much for joining us today, Representative Clyburn. I guess we'll start with something nice and simple. In your opinion, where are we now with COVID as compared to a year ago? What successes have we had, and what are some things that we're still struggling with as a nation, and in particular in your 6th district there?
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's kind of interesting, but I suspect that my answer to that question, to both those questions, would be the same thing. We are very successful so far because we have these 4 vaccines. So the vaccinations are the reasons, I think, for the success. And the problem that we have today is because of the vaccinations. It is unfortunate, but vaccine hesitancy is our big problem. We are following the science, and it seems as if there are a lot of science denials, and these deniers are driving the narrative with too many people. Mm-hmm. It's very clear to us that today, according to what I've read, 99.5% of all the people who are getting COVID-19 today are people who have not been vaccinated. That means to me that the vaccinations are successful. Mm-hmm. I heard just this morning that the variant, the Delta variant, will not penetrate those who have been vaccinated.
Oh, wow.
And yet, I'm reading that in Mississippi, there are 10 children on life support because of the Delta variant. So what has been our success seems to also be our failure.
Mm-hmm. Now, we have seen how this pandemic really was so politicized from the start. Can you speak to how this idea of being vaccinated or wearing a mask became a political statement?
Oh, it's the foolishness we got from the former president, and downright foolishness. But we ought not be surprised at that because we saw in the president's party over the last several years a lot of misinformation. Mm-hmm. And people thrive on that. There are people who are making a lot of money off of misinformation. There's a new book out. 2 ladies have published a book about the extent of the misinformation that Facebook participated in. And I think it's high time for us to get a handle on this. And it's so unfortunate that we have unwittingly allowed ourselves to be hoodwinked with all of this. The president denying science, but that started a long time ago with people saying, I can still remember people on the floor of the House of Representatives saying there is that global warming is a hoax. And here we are today registering temperatures on Earth here in the United States that rival the highest temperatures ever on Earth. These things are serious. And if we don't do something to combat this misinformation that's out here, we're going to have some serious problems going forward. The problems are serious now, but they're going to get more so.
Yes, definitely. I think the value of really getting that information to people. One thing that I have taken note of in some of the work that we have done is that there is a higher sense of hesitancy amongst our Black and Brown community. And as a former American history teacher, I have a historical root, right, a sense of why that may be, with the Tuskegee Project and different things like that throughout history. Can you talk a little bit about what have been some of the strategies that have been successful in terms of battling that distrust, where not necessarily it's the misinformation, but the distrust of government or of new medicine that is historically grounded?
Well, I'm glad to know that you are a former history teacher. So am I. So I understand the reason for so much hesitancy, at least in the Black community. I don't know whether or not this history has been pronounced in the Brown community, as it has been with things like the Tuskegee Project. And I also know a bit about the history of the polio vaccine. As you know, we had 2 polio vaccines that I'm old enough to remember when they were initiated in the 1940s. I happen to have been born in the year 1940. So I was around when polio was visiting neighborhoods, mine included, leaving one of my playmates dead and another one crippled for life. But then along came 2 people who were able to unlock some secrets, scientific secrets. Jonas Salk and Albert Sabin. Now, Jonas Salk vaccine was a shot in the arm. The Sabin vaccine was a little drop of serum on a lump of sugar. Now, you can imagine which one was preferred. You would always prefer that lump of sugar to the shot in the arm. So you can also imagine which one went where. So I understand that. However, we have worked for years now to overcome those things and to get beyond those things. There are still pockets. Well, that's true. You see it every day. You hear it, especially on one news medium, all of this foolishness. I heard some of it this morning. Just stuff that's just downright not true. And so I think that what we've got to do is combat this stuff with facts. For instance, the Moderna vaccine, the lead scientist was a 30-something-year-old African-American woman to come up with the Moderna vaccine. So we got to let people know this woman wasn't trying to kill anybody. She's trying to save lives.
Yes, 100%. So, real quick, just got to insert a little bit of history. Yes, in the Brown community, there has been a history of forced sterilization of Mexican-American women. And so that mistrust is certainly there for the Brown community as well. So we know that your district is 54% Black and 6% Hispanic. And about 40% of South Carolina is fully vaccinated. Here in Illinois, we have about 48%. Do you think that, or what do you think we can do to bring to light, like, the importance of this vaccine in ways that I think the news is maybe missing? Because I think even if you're watching the news, people are still not going out there. Do you think like incentivizing it is helping? I know in Illinois we have like a lottery going on. Do you think these incentives are helpful? I know people are giving free beer. What is it that you think we should do?
Well, all of the above. This should be a smorgasbord approach to this. I am doing a lot of things. I had a town hall last night, and the first part of my town hall was a video that my staff put together from some of the hearings I've had as chair of the coronavirus select subcommittee. And we tell the story of an African-American man who he tells his own story. He's in the clip, who turned down the vaccine, absolutely was offered it back in January and said no to it. And he contracted the virus and ended up with a double lung transplant. So we got this video of him. And I opened my town hall meeting with that 5-minute video of this man telling his story, as well as some clips from the hearings of the former African-American Surgeon General under the former administration, Dr. Adams, speaking strongly in favor of the vaccine, to reach out to those people who may be influenced by the misinformation from the last administration. An actress there talking about what it means to her and her family. And of course, yours truly there as well. That's what I'm trying to do. And I also announced then and reiterating now that on the 6th of August, when I have my annual health fair, something I've been doing for 30 years before I ever got to Congress. This year, I'm going to focus on vaccinations. And I'm going to have some other lottery. Now, I can't afford $1 million, but I'm going to I give out laptops. I give out 175 scholarships every year to high school graduates headed to college. I give them all a laptop, in addition to at least $1,000, some of them as high as $6,000, plus a laptop and a software package. So this year, I'm going to get about 25 or 30 extra laptops. And so beyond the 175 that goes to the scholarship recipients, I'm going to have a lottery for anybody who gets vaccinated in high school or college students who gets vaccinated on the 6th of August. They will go into this lottery and at least 25 of them who go off to school with a brand new laptop. So I'm doing, that's one of the things I'm doing. It may not get many people, but I'll probably come up with other things as well.
Yeah, and that it's nice to see that you're targeting the younger people, because I think they also have been a portion of the population who feels invincible or like, oh, it's not going to be that bad for me.
Right.
I'm just saying, maybe a little beer, throw a little beer in there. I don't know.
Age limits now.
I'm not a beer drinker, so I don't promote beer drinking. And then these people, most of them are probably too young to partake of the Jack Daniels that I drink.
So, Congressman Clyburn, I was so excited to be having this conversation with you. And it was really interesting because I turned on the news the other day, and there you were on a national news channel that tends to lean pretty conservative. And so then I threw your name in the search bar and saw that they seem to invite you on with some regularity onto this more conservative news channel. And as I've thought about all of this, and you've kind of referenced it, just with everything going on, and it has continued even in this health crisis that is impacting Democrats and Republicans alike. Can you talk a little bit about that ability to have cross the aisle conversations? I know your committee is made up with people, from both parties. How do we continue that?
Well, I have a lack of patience with people who tend to be insular. My whole thing is I don't know how I educate people to the extent that I can by keeping all my thoughts, my information to myself, or not going where these thoughts need to go. I say to people who are political, if you confine everything to the church, people say, well, I go to black churches. Well, most black people don't go to church. That's just a fact. So if you got a message, you got to go where the people are. It's like, what was that criminal? And they ask him, why did he rob banks? He said, that's where the money is. So I go on Fox News. I don't go with everybody because if I'm going to be on there, you got to get, if you want me on your show, you can't be talking over me. If you invite me to your show, say what you got to say, ask what questions you got to ask, and listen to my answers. Now, if you aren't going to listen to my answers, I'm not going to be on your show. Just that simple. Don't invite me. But I go. Neil Cavuto, I suspect that's who you're talking about. I do his show often. We don't agree, but he at least is respectful of my opinions. And then we'll let the listening audience determine where to go or what to think or how to react to it. So, and I do the same thing. My 10, 20, 30 funding formula that everybody's now talking about, we're trying to turn that into legislation. We got legislation, we're trying to turn it into law. And it's a bipartisan bill. This is Jim Clyburn. I started it back in 2009. Now I want to get it codified. And Harold Rogers, the Republican from Kentucky, is the co-sponsor of that. When I started my rural energy savings programs, not for his name, he's not in the Congress anymore, and I'm blocking that, a Republican. He was the co-sponsor of that. So I don't, as I said in my town hall meeting a couple of nights ago, someone asked me about this. I said, I don't have anything against Republicans. My mom and daddy were Republicans. And I loved my mom and daddy. So I don't have a problem with Republicans. Just because you're a Republican, I may have a problem. There's some Democrats that I disagree with. And so this whole notion that I ain't going to talk to you because you're a Republican, that ain't me.
Yeah, the history, shout out another podcast. Of course, I'm blanking on the name now, but they did a whole history of the Republican Party, talking about the transition of Black people from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party, and how Jackie Robinson was, a huge Republican Party, publicist, and so it is interesting. Right, the name itself is not the issue.
Yeah, well, let me help you a little bit with that. Look, the fact of the matter, I knew Jackie Robinson very, very well. I campaigned with Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson, the Republican, the last time I saw Jackie Robinson in person was at Morris Brown AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, the Republican. We were on a program together. I was supporting Hubert Humphrey, and so was he as a Republican. So, this whole notion, when I went to the floor, you remember the day that we were creating the national holiday around Juneteenth. McCarthy the Republican leader went to the floor to speak on that, and he started blaming all of these monuments in the Capitol and us. They were all put there by Democrats, and all the stuff about Democrats. Well, I went behind him and I reminded him that, yeah, they were Democrats. But when the Democratic Party decided back in the 1960s, most specifically you might go back to 1948, it was Harry Truman in 1948 that integrated the armed services. Well, yeah, before him, Franklin Roosevelt, the Democrat, wouldn't do it. But Harry Truman, the Democrat, did do it. And when he signed the executive order integrating the armed services, Strom Thurmond, the Democrat, left the party over that issue and ran as for president on the states' rights ticket. Now, when it was all over, he came back into the party. But when the Democrats decided in the 1960s to pass the 1964 Civil Rights Act under Lyndon Johnson, Strom Thurmond left the party over that issue. And this time, he became a Republican and took a bunch of those Democrats with him. So these people are running around out here now, so many of them, you got to remember, Ronald Reagan was a Democrat. And no matter what he tell you about why he left the party, most of those people, the vast majority of them, left the party because they didn't want to be around the party that was now opening up America to people of color. That's why they left. McCarthy left the floor without responding to my talk that day. So I would engage them all day, every day, because the history you can't change, and I know it.
Love to see it.
Yeah, you sound a little bit like a history teacher.
Well, thank you for doing that. Most times people tell me I sound like my father, who was a fundamentalist minister.
Got it. Yeah, I definitely, I can see that educator in you because, again, I just think if we have those historical facts, we don't need to change them. We just need to learn from them. Just because they don't fit with how we wanted things to be or how we want things to be going forward, we just need to learn from them. And
absolutely, if you remember from your studies, George Santayana, a great writer, wrote about this, and he says, if we fail to learn the lessons of history, we're bound to repeat them. And so you cannot learn history's lessons unless you learn the history. And if you whitewash the history, if you pretend the history is something different, you're going to learn the wrong lessons. And so this country is worth preserving for our children and our grandchildren. It has demonstrated over a century and a half now that it is a great country. I believe it was Alexis de Tocqueville who wrote in his 2-volume work, Democracy in America, that America is not great because it's more enlightened than any other nation. I want your listeners to hear that. America is not great because it is more enlightened than any other nation, but rather because it has always been able to repair its faults. Slavery was a lack of enlightenment. Jim Crow was a lack of enlightenment. And therefore, the country became great when it demonstrated the ability to repair those faults. That's what makes this country great. And anybody that's trying to take this country back to that dark place is trying to eliminate the greatness of this country. We are in pursuit of perfection in order to pursue a more perfect union. We must recognize the history, learn from it, know what not to repeat, and that way we will achieve more perfection. Never perfection, but more perfection.
Mm. Beautifully stated. We just did an episode on, patriotism in the 21st century and how, precisely because we love this country, we are speaking out against, its flaws. And it doesn't make us anti-American. It's just that we truly believe in its potential. So just kind of to wrap things up here, just switching gears a little bit. So Maurice and I actually operate as building principals in elementary schools. And we kind of want to know what your thoughts are on what is your best guess as to what school will look like in the fall?
I think the school in the fall, by and large, is going to be much more of a hybrid than we were planning for at the moment. It seems to me that if you look at pockets in Missouri, or Missouri, I think it's the way they prefer that the word be pronounced. If you look at places like Nevada, I know how to pronounce that one too. You're going to find that Nevada is doing much better than Missouri. And you might be able to do 4 long in-person classrooms in Nevada. I don't think you're going to be able to do that in Missouri if the current trends continue. So what I think you're going to have much more of a hybrid. Now, that's what makes Joe Biden's program so important, because even that bipartisan bill that they fashioned the other day, it's got $65 billion in it for broadband. And so if we're going to have this, pursue education for our children, so we'll lose another year, it'll be a hybrid. So I think education in the fall is going to be a hybrid in many, many places, though we would rather that it be in person. It would be stupid to go in person if you don't have buildings that have been retrofitted to the point that the HVAC systems won't be churning out COVID-19 and being able to get educated in a safe environment.
Well, we are certainly hoping for the best. I know that the CDC has passed some recommendations with regard to mask wearing if you're vaccinated and some of those different things. So we're hoping for the best. Representative Clyburn, it has been an absolute treasure to have you on today. It is our tradition here at Black, Brown, and Bilingue to ask our guests to leave us with a final thought. If there was one thing that you wanted our listeners to walk away with today, what would that be? And you can share that with us, and then we'll close things out.
I'll be glad to. I would want the listeners to walk away with what I plan to leave when I depart this country and this world. And that is the fact that this country is a great country, is not in need of being made great. We do have a challenge in this country, and that challenge is making the country's greatness accessible and affordable for all. I've instructed my children that that's what I want my tombstone. The tombstone is already there. The gravesite is next to my late wife, but I want them to put on that tombstone, he did his best to make the country's greatness accessible and affordable for all.
Wow. Perfectly said. For Black, Brown, and Bilingue, I am one of your hosts, Lisette Jacobson.
And I'm Maurice McDavid.
Muchas gracias for tuning in.
Adios.